The story of the woman caught in adultery is a very enjoyable and at first glance simple episode, but it becomes more curious the more it is studied. The first thing to note is that it was not originally part of John's Gospel. It is not written in the same style, and the earliest manuscripts of John don't have it. You will notice that it breaks up the action in the temple by having Jesus go out to the Mount of Olives for the evening, returning the next morning. If you remove this story, John 8:12 links up nicely with 7:52. Most Bibles put brackets around this story or put it in italics. Nevertheless, just because it is not original to John doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But there are other mysteries in the tale. First, why are the scribes mentioned here? The other Gospels mention them frequently, but John never does. This again points to a different origin. Second, why have they brought only the woman? If she was caught in the very act, as they claim, then the man was allowed to slink off. Leviticus 20 verse 10 specifies that both parties are in trouble. Is justice really their greatest concern here? Verse 6 shows that their motivation was really to test Jesus in front of everyone in the temple. Third, why does Jesus start writing or drawing in the dust? And what is he writing? The finger of God wrote the 10 Commandments on the stone tablets. Perhaps Jesus is writing the 10th one concerning adultery. We have no idea. What is clear is the dramatic impact. Jesus is silent and does not initially react to them. He appears to be lost in his own thoughts, and these people and this situation is not worth immediately reacting to. They badger him some more, so he responds, not with an answer which engages them, but with an invitation that disarms them, and then returns to his doodling. The trap they set for him is to make him choose between obeying Moses or Rome. If Jesus does not endorse the death penalty, he is not being Jewish. But if he tries to have her killed, he is disobeying Rome, who reserve the death penalty for themselves, and so they can accuse him to the Romans. Jesus sidesteps their trap. The law stipulated that those who accuse must be the first to stone. But Jesus says, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." What does this mean? No one could do justice if you had to be perfect to do it. Does Jesus mean you have to be guiltless of this particular sin, adultery, thus calling to mind his teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, which linked sinful thoughts with sinful actions? The effect is startling. One by one, beginning with the elders, they trickle away until no one is left. Why do they leave? The law also stated that false witnesses must suffer the same penalty they hoped to inflict. But the woman does not deny her sin, and Jesus appears to know that the charge is correct, as he tells her to sin no more. It is something of a mystery as to why her accusers leave. As noted before, they were obviously not sincere in bringing this woman forward in the first place, but something in Jesus' challenge that either genuinely stung their consciences or threatened some public humiliation. As we see elsewhere in the Gospels, Jesus' understanding of the law is much deeper and more challenging than even the Pharisees interpreted it. Jesus is the judge, and the Father has entrusted all judgment to him. He has no need to do anything according to the opinions or abilities of men. He has his own mission, own resources, timing, and testimony. He is free to condemn this woman for this or any other sin. But like the man he healed in chapter 5, he warns her not to sin anymore and lets her go. What is the point of this story, and why has it found a home here in chapter 8? Certainly it shows Jesus to be merciful. It is not a healing story, however, but a controversy story where Jesus is arguing with or being tested by the Jewish leaders. This often happens over the Sabbath and also the resurrection, as we see in the synoptic accounts. Controversy is the focus of what happens next in chapter 8. The lengthy argument here is classic to John's depiction of Jesus. In the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, Jesus normally speaks in smaller chunks which are strung together. You also get parables, which can be very short or really quite long. But there is very little dialogue where a conversation goes back and forth. But this is precisely what characterizes the way Jesus speaks in John's Gospel. We have seen Jesus talking back and forth with Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman, for example. There, he was drawing them in with his cryptic speech. Here, Jesus is in combat mode. The intent now is not to draw an inquiring person further in, but to defend himself and to accuse them, though John notes that people continue to put their trust in him even as he spoke. Jesus has another I am saying here. In chapter 6, he said he was the bread of life. Here he is the light of the world. This reminds us of the prologue again, where John described the Logos as the true light which is coming into the world. As we have seen already, John uses the festivals to bring out meaning in Jesus' speech or deeds, or to connect them with the salvation history of Israel or hopes for future salvation. In chapter 7, he implored people to come to him if they were thirsty, echoing what he said to the Samaritan woman. During the Feast of Tabernacles, the priests would gather at the pool of Siloam, which was south of the temple. They would fill jars and process back to the temple and pour out the water at the altar. This recalled prophecies such as Zechariah 14 and Ezekiel 47 about water flowing from the temple, and so anticipated the future pouring out of the Holy Spirit. There was also a ceremony of light on the seventh day of the festival, which was celebrated in the court of women at the temple, with torches and dancing to commemorate the pillar of fire which led the Israelites through the wilderness. Jesus' declarations about himself connect with both of these rich backgrounds and hopes for the future salvation of God. Again, this is easier to see if you join back together 8:12 with 7:52, which puts Jesus' speech back on the same day. The long argument concludes with Jesus focusing on their respective parentage. They claim that they have Abraham and God for their father, and that they are not slaves. But Jesus says, being sinners, they are indeed slaves, and that only the Son can set them free. Their attempts to kill him prove that whatever their claims to their lineage might be, they do not actually know either Abraham or God. They are much more like their real father, the devil. This is because they are, like him, liars and murderers. Jesus is unflinching in his declaration of the truth. It would set them free if only they could accept it. The argument reaches its climax around verse 51, when Jesus tells them that whoever keeps his word will never see death. Jesus is again being non-literal, and, as intended, the argument turns on his opponents taking him literally. They flounder as they grapple with it, accusing him of being possessed for his claims to immortality, but now Jesus can make his grand point. Scoffing at Jesus' claim to have known Abraham, Jesus drops his bombshell. Very truly, I tell you, before Abraham was, I am. Everything Jesus has said in this argument about not knowing God and therefore not being able to accept Jesus' words, which have come from God, is proved right in their reaction. They pick up stones to kill him.